Thank you, Alexis. I'd like to invite Zahava Uddin to the podium, Director of Innovation Outcomes at GE Healthcare Partners. Your new boss is a healthcare guy.
Yes, he is. John Flannery, that's right. We're pretty excited about that. So thank you, David. And thanks for giving me the opportunity to fill in for Jeff Terry, my colleague, who notified me 3 days ago that I'm filling in for him today. So I apologize. I've got less slides, more notes in front of me, so just be patient with me. When I read about the theme for the symposium today, I have to say I couldn't concur more that if we found ways to incentivize or to fund healthcare providers on an outcomes basis, I absolutely think that that would open up a whole host of opportunities for innovation. And the question then, I don't think that we're going to hear a whole lot other than that there is a case for change. I think we'll hear some good examples today, so I'm excited about that. What I think the question then becomes is how do we get over the inertia that we find ourselves in oftentimes in healthcare? And we heard some of, I think it was Barry's comments that public and private sector are different, and we do things a whole lot faster in the private sector. So I want to touch on some of those takeaways that I have for you. Disrupting the way we do things, whether with new products, new services, new models, new policies, you know, it takes hard work and it takes a very different way of thinking about change. And we pay a lot of attention to this inside of GE. I work for GE Healthcare Partners. It's a very innovative part of a very innovative company. So GE Healthcare Partners, what we do is we're really focused on, we're a consultancy and an analytics firm, been around for 20 years, and we go very, very deep into seamless patient care. And that means a lot of things to a lot of different people, but what everyone can agree on is that it's about efficiency and it's about quality outcomes. I don't need to spin it any other way. And we've been bringing innovative tools and methods to bear that some have described as quite breakthroughs. So I want to touch on those today. We've been doing innovation at GE for 125 years, you know, from the light bulb to the first radio broadcast to handheld ultrasounds, and more recently to drone technology now that can you know, do aerial inspection of oil and gas flare stacks without having to shut down those stacks, send a guy to go up and climb it and inspect it, and they have to shut it down for days to cool those stacks down. Now we can send drones, high temperature. They've got all sorts of ways to collect sensor data and just do things in a very massively different way. So these are some of my takeaways about innovation that I'm going to touch on today and share some examples over the next few minutes. And my hope is to inspire certainly the influencers in the room, the thought leaders, and even the skeptics that you know, innovation for outcome's sake, it's a pretty profound combination if you can get going on it. But before I do that, I just want to draw your attention for a minute to the past. Does anybody know what this is a picture of? Cindy, I can't ask you. You work for GE. Yes? David?
It's the Churchill's War Room, isn't it?
That's correct. 1941. So, you know, when the war ended, it was pencils down, and that's exactly what it looked like back then. Oh, and does anyone know what this is? You can't answer the same person twice. NASA Mission Control, yes, I heard it over here. So this is the original NASA Mission Control, 1963, and then this is NASA Mission Control, the new one that opened in 2014. And bottom line is, these are command centers. They're known as Mission Control, Nerve Centers, Command Centers, a lot of different things. They're all essentially the same thing. Here you see pictures of the municipal headquarters in Brazil. You see U.S. Army Mobile. You see a lot of things. KLM Amsterdam manages all their plane assets. You've got China Rail. You've got Paris Police. And if you look closely, what they all have in common are the same core elements. There's a physical space, a dedicated physical space. There's a wall of useful information and insights. There are staff with very purposeful roles and responsibilities, co-located. They have the authority and the wherewithal to impact problems that are about to rise or that are arising. And I have to say, I can't resist. In this case, building a wall is actually innovative. But you know, this last this next picture here, this is a hospital command center, and this is actually the Judy Wright's Capacity Command Center in Baltimore, Maryland at the Johns Hopkins Hospital. And it's NASA-like, if you look at it at first glance. And it's the first of its kind in terms of scale and scope that we have seen. 5,500 square feet, 14 analytics that exist outside the EMR, drawing data from about 15 source systems, harmonizing that data, applying machine learning, predictive and other algorithms to that data, 35 staff running a 24/7 operation, all with the objective to make the best use of their fixed resources in the hospital, their staff, their beds, and so on, their equipment, and so on, and keep patients coming in, discharging while they're in there, keep them moving, keep the care very seamless, and then also deliver a terrific quality and experience for those patients while they're in the hospital. So GE partnered with Johns Hopkins in 2014, and together we built this command center. We designed it, we built it, we activated it, no small feat, and it took us about 18 months, and we were solving some very, very specific challenges. Command centers, if you think about them, they're kind of like a second level capability. There's a lot of good tools, you know, EMR tools now they've got sepsis detection algorithms in there, but this exists, I'm not gonna say on top of it, maybe beside it, on top of it, but it's a second level capability that applies smarts on top of that. And when you got 80% false positives of sepsis detection, is there another layer that you can apply on top of that to make that even more accurate and precise? So think of it as a second level capability. And really the idea here is to prioritize certain action, de-risk risk when it's appearing, and really to expedite delays long before they turn into undesired consequences. But the important thing about command centers is that they deliver outcomes, and you can see that Hopkins today, they are now about 18 months, they went live February 2016, 18 months into their command center operation, and they've been able to see 7% more patients with the same fixed cost structure, haven't had to change that. It is much safer, and at the same time, they've reduced emergency department admit waiting time 35%, reduced their OR holds 70% because of downstream congestion, and then important to their mission is their ability to accept patients from out of state, and they were able to reduce that. The amount of times they declined, which was about 60 a month, as part of their financial successes to be able to see those patients. They reduced those declines almost 80%. So the command center has made a difference. It has delivered on operational patient safety, quality, and financial outcomes. So what are the important takeaways? Let's go back to that list for a second, and I'll put some color on some of these. And I reflected on not only Hopkins, but on the Humber River Hospital. We are opening one of these hospital command centers November 30th at the end of this month. It's been about 12 months of terrific work with the hospital. And important to mention, this is not just a North American phenomenon. We are well underway with work in Brazil, in the UK, in Australia, in the Middle East. And this is just something that we do see as something that has emerged. It's not emerging, it has emerged. So first, real innovation, of course, must follow a process. I have David, where did the time go? I got 1.5 minutes left, okay. Did you press fast forward on that? No? I have a 100-page document that talks about, innovation as a process in GE, but the bottom line is we've distilled it down to be very pragmatic in our part of the business. And we use problem-backed design. Einstein once said if he had 60 minutes to solve a problem, he'd spend 55 minutes thinking about the problem and 5 minutes thinking about the solutions. You cannot solve a problem if you don't understand the nature of the problem. So, we spend an amazing amount of time on the front end of these command center journeys, and really to understand what those problems are. And I don't talk about problems in a negative way. It's just a really good way to get your head around it and to figure out what you're trying to solve. Point two, real quick, even though there's a process, innovation and intuition are connected. It has to feel stressful. If it doesn't feel stressful, you're probably not innovating. You're thinking about innovating, or you're getting ready to innovate, or you're talking about innovating, but you're probably not innovating. At all our command center sites, we have to deliver those outcomes. These are big investments for hospitals, and we have to deliver on those outcomes for GE. We have to do it on time, on budget, and there's a lot of stress with this, but we have a ton of talented people to make it happen. Third, we encourage people to take big swings. We heard that from Barry this morning. Fail fast, fail cheap. It spurs more innovation. A lot of innovation came from failure, so we totally believe in that. And there's so many things when we went through our first command center implementation with Hopkins that we learned and that we now apply in our second one and our third one and our fourth one. So we found in the first 30 days, we basically spend a lot of time, we take a lot of time to describe what are the actions each person is going to do in the command center. Which boards or which analytics are they looking at? Which data, which alarms are they responsible for responding to? Who are they working with? And it's all very painstakingly designed through this 12-month process. It's not just about the wall and the engineering behind the analytics. It's about the human action that happens inside the command center. And we learned at Hopkins that in the first 30 days, people aren't stressed about, or they're not stressed about, they're not focused on how do I do those actions exactly how we design them, and we're helping them through those first few months of it. They're like, where are the washrooms? Where's the, what are our rules around leaving stuff in the fridge? Who's going to sit next to whom? And so, we learned that. And so now with our Humber one, we are doing that early days before doors open on the command center. And we are doing that, what we call hygiene. We're prescribing that into our activity. So you got to learn from your mistakes, big and small. The fourth point there, if you think about some of the most innovative companies out there, Apple sure would be on that list. And Apple, what are they really good at? They're really good at early prototyping. And so that's something inside of GE. We worked a lot with Eric Ries on his concept of the lean startup. And he spent a ton of time with GE at the very senior levels, and we've trickled it down throughout the organization. But the concept of minimally viable product, it's not for everything. You're not going to use that in the most clinical of clinical settings, but the where you can shape an idea with the quote-unquote customer or the client, the end user, you can bring a minimally viable product out there in whatever shape or form. You can commercialize it, you can not commercialize it, you can pilot it, but that's what you have to do, and that's how we do this analytics work. You don't know what you don't know until you start building interfaces and trying to get all that data. You might have an analytic concept, a concept behind that, and then you start to work it, you start to engineer it, you build the interfaces, because we're taking data from across a lot of systems. You bring it together, and you don't know what you don't know. And so then you have to substitute, or you have to find new ways to do things. So the point is that don't wait for the perfect solution before you go out there and try to trial it. And then real quick, innovation happens on all levels. When we did this command center work the first time, we had to innovate legal. We had to innovate how we think about IP, how we think about an ecosystem. We had to innovate our service model. We had to innovate how we go to market. A lot of things we had to innovate. So you innovate your product, your service, your model, whatever it is, but you have to innovate everything that goes around that. And then lastly, last point here, this is probably the most important point, is I have to say that innovation requires doing and not just talking. Our terrific quote by Thomas Edison, our founder, most people overlook opportunity, and you can substitute that for innovation, because it's dressed in overalls and it looks like work. It's hard. It's really hard stuff. And if we had known the amount of work going into one of these command center designs and builds and activations, we could have gotten scared off. It's been a ton of work each time we do it. We do have to find ways to scale and do it faster and cheaper, but they're terrific journeys, and they take a lot of work. It really sucks a lot out of us. So I will close, David, with just this thing. I want to note that breakthrough tools, capabilities, models, they seem futuristic, and it's scary, right? So how do you get started? But it doesn't mean that we should value them less. Amara's law talks about the hype phenomenon, and that because something may have value in the long term, and we heard it this morning from David, that just, the value might be there in 5 years or something, but we shouldn't discount that value. We tend to value things that deliver impact in the short term because we kind of think quarter to quarter or year to year. And if you look at this picture here, that's St. Peter's Square in Rome, 2005. That's when Pope Benedict was announced. This is the same picture, 2013, St. Peter's Square, Pope Francis announced. And it's amazing, right, to see the smartphone adoption there. But if you look really closely in the bottom right of the top picture, do you see that lonely soul there with some kind of a flip phone or something? Wow. You know, and so if you look at kind of back then, that would have been like, huh? You know, and change seems really slow when you're in the moment, year to year, but when you look over a 10-year horizon, boy, the stuff that you can achieve. If someone took a bet on that flip phone there, and now look at where we are. So the world has changed, the world's changing. I think the best is ahead of us. Love innovation, and thank you, David.